Welcome to the Author Alchemist podcast. I'm here to make your writing magic happen. I'm going to teach you how to use your superpowers to ignite, inspire, and encourage your creativity so that you can turn lead into gold. Join me, Kimber York, as I delve into the many mysteries of inspiration, motivation, and imagination. Here we are at the 14th episode. Woohoo! In a perfect world, this would be a mile marker of 14 weeks of podcasts, but I have been slow off the start line with this whole project due to figuring out the technicalities of it and trying to place it into a workflow around everything else in my life, which has been a bit of a challenge. So the goal is definitely to have this as a weekly project. Hopefully by the time this episode airs, that is indeed what's happening on a consistent basis. Welcome to 2019, I guess. Yikes. I am having to catch up on everything. An amusing side note, I've started using dictation to increase my writing output, and I'm very happy with that, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have about using dictation for writing. But it's very different from talking for a podcast because when I do dictation, I have to include all the grammatical marks such as period and exclamation mark. And it's hard for me to hold back from that. So if you hear me randomly say period through this podcast, you'll know why, and I'll try to cut them out if that happens, but I make no guarantees. The brain is hard to switch on and off in certain areas sometimes. Okay, so let's get to what is actually the topic of this particular episode, one I've been holding back on because I wanted listeners and readers and friends and strangers to get to know me a little bit through the podcast and possibly by visiting my site or signing up for any of my courses. But this is the backstory for the Author Alchemist. It's going to get a little deep at times, but I want to share this story not as braggadocio or as simply boring history, but maybe as a way to share with all of you that yes, it can be done. Yes, you can do the things you dream of doing and that you want to do. So with that in mind, let's do that deep dive part. It takes us all the way back to 7th and 8th grade. And hey, I didn't go all the way back to the day I was born, so count yourself lucky, right? I actually wrote a lot of fan fiction when I was in 7th and 8th grade. Those were years I was in public school, which for me was exceedingly rare. I spent the majority of my childhood homeschooled in an unschooling environment, which basically means it was very unstructured, and I got to set my own timetable and choose my own topics. And that is not how public school works at all. So it was a little bit of a culture shock when I got in there. I had very few marketable social skills for that age group. And I ended up, unsurprisingly, hanging out with other geek girls like me. We were fans of Star Trek, and we bonded over the old television show and the new movies. Keep in mind, this was the mid-1980s, and so we were fresh off the high of Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan, among other gems in the Star Trek universe, and we wrote a lot of fan fiction. We didn't know that other people did this. We thought we had invented something new and unique and wild. When I did later find out that people did this collectively and had been doing it for a long time, I was amazed and shocked, and used what little allowance money I had at the few conventions my mother took me to surreptitiously buy fanfic zines on the down low. Anyway, back to my point. One of the things that I really loved about that experience was not just the writing itself, but that we often did things in a round-robin style, or we would exchange what we now call works in progress with each other back and forth to encourage each other and give each other ideas. This was met with uneven success. I think we started a lot more stories than we finished, but then again, that's not uncommon for any writer, is it, right? I bring that up not just to secure my bona fides as an old fangirl, but to talk about how much I loved writing in that collaborative environment and how much I loved encouraging my friends to get that story out of them. I was what has been termed recently an alpha reader. You may or may not know, a beta reader is someone who is invited to read an early draft of a story in order to give feedback on how to improve it. A beta reader comes before an editor, and generally beta readers have traditionally been friends or close acquaintances or people you trust who you know will not be unduly harsh or cruel about the story, but will also be honest. However, beta readers come in when the story is done or close to it. Alpha readers have been identified as people who read the story as it progresses and gives you feedback and encouragement on it. Now, that is a particularly important part to stress, the encouragement aspect, because an alpha reader's job, when you boil it down, is to keep you writing. An alpha reader is there to make sure that you don't get so frustrated with the story that you stop completely, and that you find the joy of writing the story if you get bogged down with it. So I was a wee little fangirl serving as an alpha reader for my friends, and I loved it. So what does that have to do with me in 2018? Starting this business over the course of a summer, pulling together the courses that are for sale, figuring out how to use my alpha reader skills to encourage people I don't know to write the stories they want to read. For one thing, I think tapping into inspiration itself is a skill. It's one reason that books about writing are so popular. And I don't mean the technical books, but I mean books like Stephen King's On Writing, and more recently, Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Big Magic: Creative Living Beyond Your Fear. I was listening to this book on Audible recently, and it struck me that the majority of the book focuses on exactly the same thing that I'm trying to do here, which is convince people that the story you have to tell is worth telling, not because stories like that haven't been told before, but because you have a unique voice and will create a unique and special story to share. Now, I have actually done alpha reader duties for a lot of my friends in the professional publishing world, and I've been doing that for a while as an exchange of support with them because they often do the same for me. But here is the honest truth about being a professional author. It is an unpredictable profession. Even authors who have managed to successfully sell a popular book will find that their income wavers quite a bit, and they may not get optioned for a second book by their publishers. And honestly, that's why you have a lot of authors turning to self-publishing in order to continue their career. How successful they are at that is not a topic of this podcast at all, but it includes a lot of different variables. And one of those variables is to keep publishing books. Build your audience by giving them what they want. Keeping the momentum up for that can be very difficult for authors who are not seeing the immediate feedback that those of us who are fan fiction authors are used to getting from our stories when we post them and immediately start receiving comments, or if we've posted them on Archive of Our Own, kudos that tell us people are reading them and that they are enjoying them. After a while, I figured out that maybe, just maybe, I could use my superpowers for good, and not just for other people, but for myself. Writing as a profession is something I want to do, and I wanted to have freedom, both financially and with my time, to do the things that I want to do, including travel and, not incidentally, write all the stories I want to write. That takes time, one way or another. And if your time is filled up with a day job, as well as writing, as well as other obligations, then what gets crunched down into nothingness is the time you have to spend on the stories you want to write. So I put that all in a pot, stirred it all up, and decided that I would start a coaching business using my ability to encourage and motivate authors as a way to build a side income to supplement my writing income. I hesitated on pulling the trigger on this business idea because, honestly, let's be real, online coaches are a dime a dozen out there, and some are truly terrible and some are fantastic, but there is a market saturation. As well, I wondered if it would be viewed as some form of selling out to try to just make some money on top of helping people overcome their inhibitions and insecurities as writers. If I were a good person, wouldn't I just do that for free? My compromise was this podcast. The podcast is free. You're listening to it now at no charge. I don't accept advertising dollars for this, and I plan never to accept advertising dollars for this podcast. Putting it on record right now. This is what's free for you. This is me putting out there the energy and the support and the love that I have for other writers, and hoping that you will grab onto it and use this encouragement, if it's just only my voice, to write the things you love to read. The flip side is that I do need to make money, and while my book sales are doing okay, they are not supporting the lifestyle to which my dog has become accustomed. I mean, my dog eats really expensive food, y'all, and she loves those bully sticks things, which, if you know what they are, we're not even going into that right now, okay? Just get that out of your brain. But they aren't cheap either. So yeah, my dog is expensive, eats better than I do, and I need to be able to support her fully. That's just important to me, and obviously important to her. In the end, I started The Author Alchemist with the idea of helping people overcoming their fears and inhibitions as writers, helping myself to financial freedom, and most importantly, helping get the stories out in the world that I know people want to share. I am convinced that you have a great story to tell. I don't doubt that at all. So that's the long tale of The Author Alchemist, going all the way back to the mid-'80s, and me as a young, geeky, socially awkward, formerly homeschooled geek who wanted to immerse herself in the worlds she found so engaging, and just as importantly, wanted to encourage her friends to do the same. Everyone listening to this podcast falls into that bracket. You are, in my mind, a friend. You are a fellow writer, and I really look forward to seeing the stories you have to tell. That is the alchemical lesson for today, that my goal is to get everyone writing the stories they love to read. So thanks for hanging in there for this slightly self-indulgent episode. My dog appreciates your time and attention. I would also appreciate it if you would rate the show on iTunes. Doing so helps spread the word about the show and gets it in front of more people, which contributes to my goal of helping more people So it's win-win for all of us, okay? And go over to my website when you get a chance. Sign up for the Bulletproof Writer course, which is still available. Great free email course that I've designed to help you get your butt in the chair and start writing. I've gotten great feedback on it. It's 14 days of advice, encouragement, and motivation. So what you got to lose? Absolutely nothing. So go on over, smack down your email address, and we'll get that started to you right away. I've got more courses in Fanfiction Academy coming up, in addition to Whip into Shape, which is the short course on how to finish stories you've let languished and are uncertain how to finish, or go back and approach again, or even look at. I mean, if you have a story there that you're just cringing because you can't figure out what to do with it, then this course is the one that you need, because it will just hand walk you through the whole process of figuring out what the problem is and kickstarting you into finishing it. But I've also got another one that I've gotten requests for, and I'm working on that course now, which is Fanfic Academy Out from Fanfic, which will be a medium-length course, I think it's looking like, that will help everybody who wants to move from writing fan fiction and start writing original fiction, learn the ropes and overcome the challenges and difficulties of that transition. It's a real thing. Some people can do it very easily, and this course isn't for them. This course is for the people who find it overwhelming or just can't get a grip on the whole process of how to start a story that isn't a fan fiction story. So that's going to be coming along here soon. As always, I really appreciate you all listening, tuning in, and I would also love to hear from you. So please email me and drop by the website and do whatever you need to do. Got a contact page there as well. Looking forward to it. Have a great, productive week full of inspiration, motivation, and creativity. Thank you for listening to the Author Alchemist podcast. I'm Kimbu York, and I hope this episode has helped to clear away the cobwebs from your inspiration and given you the power to write the stories you want to read. Now, it's time for us to get some writing done. Talk to y'all soon.